Now, the top international story is coming out of the UK. Let's continue now with coverage of that developing story. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has resigned. His resignation follows an exodus of ministers from his cabinet earlier this week. Pressure building for him to leave office for a while now. Just to get some analysis, the significance of all of this, I'm joined now by international relations expert, Professor John Stremler. Prof, good afternoon and thank you very much for your time. Welcome to today here on eNCA. How significant is this moment of Boris Johnson's resignation? We know he'll remain as a caretaker for a while the Conservative Party is set to elect a new leader. But there will be pressure, we understand, from the Labour Party, who want him gone completely from 10 Downing Street as of now.
Well, thank you very much, because it is a big story. And what we're finding is that Boris Johnson has been trying to hang on to power. And in Parliament a day or so ago was saying that he would stay and fight. But now he's changed his mind. And the speculation this morning was he'd stay until October when the party has its Congress. But then I saw his statement, listened to his statement in front of 10 Downing Street earlier today, when he said as soon as a successor has been chosen. And that could happen very quickly if the party, in fact, decides to do that. It could name the deputy prime minister to be a caretaker acting while the party decides on who should be the next prime minister. We don't know how that's going to unfold, but it is a very dramatic moment. And it's a reminder that democracies can change even when they have a lying populist like a Donald Trump as prime minister. Not to make an invidious comparison, but Johnson does have the same kind of attributes that Trump does and that other populists often do.
Yeah, it was very much little for him to do. Even his party now was turning against him. I mean, the pressure was there even from within. He had no choice really now.
Well, he did not, after the 58, resign. But what was instructive to me was the tipping point that occurred on Tuesday when his Chancellor of the Exchequer and his Minister of Health and Social Care, which is the COVID ministry, both resigned within a few minutes of each other. The first, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Sunak, is an Indian British citizen, and the Minister of Health is in fact a Pakistani, Sajid Javid, and that is a sign of Britain becoming more pluralistic and more diverse, and I think that's to the good of everyone.
Yeah, so has he done the right thing? And what could the impact be now? I'm just asking this in the context of what we saw through the Brexit, which was a bigger issue, but now he's leaving and there's so many moving pieces, and it's an uncertain world, for example.
No, it's a very uncertain world, and autocrats, Vladimir Putin, first among them, will say, see, the problem with democracies are that they're unstable. Well, maybe, but they can adjust. And in this case, it was a deception that the proximate cause, the deception of Boris Johnson, in that he claimed he didn't know that the guy he was promoting, Pitcher, for the chief whip, was in fact under accusation of sexual misconduct. That seemed credible in the papers of Britain, and Johnson had to backpedal, and I think that was the tipping point. But it, in fact, means that it's a vote for honesty in office and integrity in office, and Johnson fell short on both of those, and maybe this is a good sign.
Yeah, maybe it's a good sign, but at the same time now, I mean, we had some voxes, as we call them here in the media space, of people on the ground in London. Just a few comments from them. Everybody says it's about time. It was really about time for him to go. Some of them accusing him of having been an arrogant leader.
Absolutely, and I'm not surprised that these are coming out. But don't forget that in less than 3 years ago, in this Brexit rollout, he tapped into a growing frustration among the Conservative Party and ex-Laborites who are concerned about globalization, their falling status. And in some ways, it's similar to the adjustments that the United States is undergoing, but that's a whole other subject. And as a result, they outpoured and voted for a conservative majority that was larger than anything we've seen in recent history. And a month or so ago, he had a no confidence vote, which he had lost 40% of the parliamentarians. So it moved very quickly, but there was this popular support for pulling out of the European Union, which I thought was very misguided and whipped up by the kind of populist rhetoric that Johnson promised, and it has not delivered. The economy is in terrible shape, and in the aftermath of COVID, but it's also in terrible shape with inflation, in part because they are pulling out of the European Union, in my view.
Yeah, finally, and very briefly, Prof, if you may, he was described as a friend by somebody across the Atlantic a few years ago. Donald Trump described Boris Johnson as a good friend of his. I wonder what Washington will be making of this change. Have you got any sense at this stage across the Atlantic they'll be looking at this UK, which is an ally that they can trust now and again, including in NATO? What do you think Washington is making of all of this?
I think that there is a strong British commitment, national commitment, to stand with NATO and to be very hard on the Russian invasion of Ukraine. This is in Europe's backyard, and I don't see any change in that policy. I think that it could reverberate in the United States to Trump's detriment, but don't forget Trump is already under the gun right now for having fomented the violence of January 6th and his unwillingness to accept, which is absolutely fundamental to any successful democracy, a certified electoral result. And no former leader has ever done that, and I think this will just add to the pressure for moving on beyond Trump. What we'll get instead is anyone's guess, and that's the same kind of uncertainties that we have over the politics of this country right now in terms of where the voters are going to be.
I'm sure Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are watching that space very closely. The next few weeks will tell us who's going to be the successor of Boris Johnson in 10 Downing Street. Thank you very much, Prof, for some of your insights and analysis this hour as we continue to delve deep into this big international story that's playing itself out. And that's, of course, the exit of Boris Johnson as UK Prime Minister. He announced that a little bit earlier this afternoon.